Growing up, I always felt that my father and I were from two completely different worlds. He was a man of action, direct and to the point, while I was more introspective and quiet. Our personalities never seemed to align, and from a young age, I started to feel like I was the child who didn't quite fit into his expectations. He was someone who valued hard work, practical accomplishments, and direct communication, while I was more emotional, thoughtful, and often lost in my own thoughts. For a long time, I thought that made me unworthy of his attention. My father's love language, I began to realize, wasn't based on words or affection, but on deeds. He showed love by providing, by ensuring that we were never without, and by pushing us to strive for success. He wasn't the kind of dad who would sit down with me and discuss my dreams or worries. Instead, he gave me advice that was often straightforward and firm, with little room for emotional nuance. "Don't be weak," he would tell me when I came to him with a problem. "Life's tough. Get over it." I always felt like I was failing him in some way. When I struggled with school, when I had doubts about my career choices, when I found myself wrestling with emotional challenges, I never felt that I could go for understanding. His way of handling things was to toughen up, not to reflect or talk things through. And as much as I loved him, I resented him for it. I wanted him to understand me, to see me as someone who wasn't just the sum of my achievements, but also someone with feelings and dreams. This disconnect grew more pronounced as I entered my teenage years. I often felt like he didn't see me as his daughter, but as another task to manage, another project to fix. Our conversations, when they did happen, were mostly about what I needed to do or what I hadn't done right, and when I tried to express my own emotions, he often dismissed them. "There's no time to feel sorry for yourself," he would say, his voice stern and unyielding. "You have to keep moving forward." By the time I was in my early 20s, I had become used to the silence between us. We had a routine. I would come home during holidays or special occasions. We would talk about surface-level things, and then we would go our separate ways. I had convinced myself that this was just the way things were. I accepted that my father and I didn't have the kind of close relationship that I sometimes saw in movies or read about in books. He loved me in his own way, I thought, but he wasn't capable of giving me what I needed. I began to build walls, not just around him, but around myself as well. I shut down emotionally, telling myself that if he wasn't going to be the kind of father I wanted, then I didn't need him to be in my life. But everything changed when I was 23. I had just moved to a new city to start my first real job after college. It was a huge step for me, one I had worked toward for years, but it was also terrifying. There were days when I felt completely out of my depth, unsure of myself, and questioning whether I was capable of succeeding in the world on my own. I found myself struggling with feelings of loneliness, self-doubt, and homesickness. For the first time in my life, I realized that I didn't have all the answers. And for the first time, I felt truly vulnerable. I was sitting in my apartment one evening, scrolling through social media, when I saw a post from a colleague who had received a promotion at work. It triggered something inside me, a deep, gnawing feeling of inadequacy. I wasn't sure if I was doing enough, if I was making the right choices. I began to spiral, thinking about all the ways I had failed, all the ways I was falling short of my own expectations. The old doubts about my abilities resurfaced, and I felt that familiar sense of isolation creep in. In that moment, I did something I hadn't done in years. I picked up the phone and called my father. It was late, and I wasn't sure if he would even pick up, but to my surprise, he did. He sounded groggy at first, but I could hear the surprise in his voice when he realized it was me. I didn't know what I was expecting from him. I just needed someone to talk to. "Dad," I said, my voice shaking, "I don't know what I'm doing. I'm so unsure of myself, and I feel like I'm failing." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. I wasn't used to opening up to him like this. "You're not failing," he finally said. "You are learning." It was simple, but it struck me hard. "Learning?" I repeated, feeling a little confused. "Yeah," he said, his voice softer than I expected. "You're young. You don't have to have everything figured out. Life is full of challenges. You can't always know what comes next, but you can take each step, even if it's small, and learn from it." I sat in silence for a moment, trying to process his words. I had spent so many years expecting him to tell me what I wanted to hear, that I was doing well, that I was enough. But in that moment, I realized something important. My father wasn't going to give me that reassurance in the way I thought I needed. But what he did offer was something even more valuable: the permission to fail, the space to grow, and the understanding that it was okay to not have everything figured out. For the first time, I understood that my father had never been the type to give me soft words or reassurance because he believed that I was strong enough to find my own way. He had been preparing me in his own way for the hard realities of life. He had been teaching me to be resilient, even when I didn't realize it. After that conversation, things started to change. I began to open up more, not just to my father, but to others as well. I realized that I had spent so much time resenting him for not being the father I wanted him to be that I had missed out on the ways he had been supporting me all along. I began to appreciate his quiet strength, his ability to see things from a practical perspective, and his belief in my ability to handle challenges, even when I doubted myself. My relationship with my father didn't magically transform overnight. We still had our differences, still had moments of miscommunication. But that conversation marked the beginning of something new. I started to see him less as a distant authority figure and more as someone who had always cared for me in his own way. Someone who had always been there, even when I couldn't see it. Looking back, I realized that the greatest gift my father gave me wasn't just his love or his guidance, but the ability to believe in myself. He showed me I didn't need his approval to feel confident in who I was. I didn't need to be perfect or have all the answers to be worthy of love. And most importantly, I realized that it was okay to fail, to struggle, and to grow. Because that's how we become who we are meant to be.